They never expect to wake up with your thoughts filling their mind from the very first moment. That is the first important thing you need to understand. Most people are simply not strong enough to face the emotions they have buried deep inside, using all their willpower and determination to keep those feelings hidden for a long time. The intensity had already started taking hold because pretending not to care works quietly at first, making everything seem normal on the outside, but the truth was never peaceful. It became a silent battle they had been losing for much longer than they wanted to admit. Even while their eyes stayed closed and everything around them looked calm, something inside was changing. You probably noticed it yourself. There was a small shift, a quiet change in their energy, as if something important was slowly growing beneath the surface they worked so hard to maintain. It was never really about distance or confusion. It was about something much deeper. It was about finally recognizing what was happening inside them, whether they wanted to admit it or not. If you want to understand how someone secretly struggles with powerful feelings for you, hit like right now. Most people do not welcome strong emotions when they first appear. Instead, they try to push them away. They question every feeling from every possible angle, hoping to find a reason that makes it disappear. They hide those emotions behind logic, pride, and the emotional walls they have carefully built over many years. What they feel for you does not fit the picture they have created of themselves, and that makes everything much harder to accept. This inner conflict is where everything becomes difficult. The more those feelings challenge their pride, the harder they try to bury them. They convince themselves they are in control, but every attempt to ignore those emotions only makes them stronger. This process is what experts like Freud described as repression. It is the mind's natural way of hiding feelings or desires that seem unacceptable, but repression is not the same as making those feelings disappear. Instead, it creates pressure that continues to grow over time. That pressure keeps building inside until it finally finds a way to come out, no matter how much effort someone puts into holding it back. Most people never understand this until it becomes impossible to ignore. What they refused to accept yesterday slowly becomes the force guiding their thoughts today. Without realizing it, those hidden emotions begin shaping every decision they make. That is why this morning felt different from every other morning they had experienced before. It was not because something new suddenly appeared. It happened because something finally broke inside them. You were not there to witness that private moment when their denial finally began to fall apart. This hidden collapse was never a spoken confession or a message sent to you. It was simply the moment when every method they used to escape their feelings stopped working. If you have ever been the person someone could not stop thinking about first thing in the morning, then you understand exactly what this silence feels like. Their usual distractions faded away, and instead of becoming just another memory, you became an unavoidable truth they could no longer push aside. Simple attraction can often be ignored. Curiosity can disappear after some time. But emotions carrying real meaning are different. When feelings become deep enough, the mind can no longer keep everything locked away forever. They found themselves facing one question they had avoided for a long time. Why do you affect them so deeply? They searched for logical explanations, telling themselves it was temporary and would eventually pass. They tried giving it different names, calling it coincidence, chemistry, or simple timing. They accepted every possible explanation except the one they feared the most. The truth is simple. Nobody spends so much energy explaining away something that means nothing. People do not fight against emotions that are not real. They do not bury feelings that have no importance. Every effort they made to remove you from their mind only made your presence stronger. Every distraction eventually failed when they needed it the most. This was never about weakness. It was about the undeniable pull of something they could no longer control. They wanted complete control over their emotions, their choices, and the direction of their life. Then you appeared and quietly disturbed the balance they had spent years creating. You became the one part of their life they could not understand through logic alone. You became the feeling they could not predict, and the presence they could not erase no matter how hard they tried. That loss of control frightened them more than they were willing to admit. It was never only about you. It was also about what your presence awakened inside them. You did not simply create a brief emotional moment. You brought hidden parts of them back to life. People are often less afraid of emotions themselves than they are of losing control over who they believe they are. That explains why they suddenly pulled away. It explains why their actions became confusing and inconsistent. Their energy seemed scattered, not because they cared less, but because they were feeling much more than they knew how to handle. Feelings this powerful demand a decision, and they were simply not ready to make one. Avoidance is not proof that desire is missing. Very often it shows that the desire has become strong enough to create an inner battle. Their conscious mind kept telling them to stay safe and remain logical, while their subconscious continued bringing your image back again and again. During quiet moments, when every distraction disappeared, your presence returned even stronger. Instead of fading with time, your image became clearer. Every day it felt sharper and harder to ignore. Denial needs distance to survive, yet your influence kept growing even without physical closeness between you. Once a feeling moves beyond doubt and settles deep inside the subconscious, it no longer waits for permission. It quietly demands attention until it can no longer be ignored. Before long, one side begins moving closer toward you, while the other side fights just as hard to pull away with all its strength. Neither side is ready to give up easily in this ongoing inner struggle. This is not simple confusion or uncertainty. It is a deep internal conflict between powerful desire and an equally powerful instinct to protect themselves. Both forces continue to grow stronger because what they feel for you has moved far beyond simple attraction. It is slowly becoming a real emotional attachment that is taking shape deep within them. Attachment can feel frightening to someone who fears losing control over their life, emotions, and personal choices. Most people never notice this quiet process taking place inside themselves. The stronger the emotional pull becomes, the stronger their mental defenses rise to protect them from possible pain. That is why, after recognizing what they truly felt, they did not immediately move forward with confidence. Instead, they paused, thought about everything endlessly, and carefully examined every possible outcome before taking another step. They started overthinking situations that once felt completely simple because those same moments now carried much greater meaning and much higher emotional risk. Anything that holds real value can begin to feel like a possible threat to their freedom, their identity, and the image they have spent years creating. People rarely fear losing something that means nothing to them. The fact that they are so cautious reveals just how important this connection has quietly become. The same feeling that keeps drawing them closer is also pushing them back at the very same time. That constant conflict creates an inner tension that slowly drains their energy day after day. This pressure does not stay locked inside their heart. It follows them into everyday life, reaching ordinary moments that once felt completely normal. Now even simple experiences seem to carry a quiet reminder of you, even when there is no direct reason for it. A certain comment, a familiar voice, a brief pause, or even a moment of silence can suddenly bring thoughts of you rushing back without warning. If you have ever sensed someone hiding strong feelings for you, you may have noticed these quiet signs. A certain tone of voice, an unexpected hesitation, or an unusual silence can reveal far more than words ever could. Their subconscious mind keeps holding on to you because it does not follow schedules or logical plans. It works beneath the surface, beyond conscious control. You have crossed an important line inside their thoughts, which means you are no longer just another option. Your presence has become something they cannot easily ignore or set aside. Now, they are forced to face a difficult question they have avoided for a long time. Why you out of everyone they could have met? Why does your presence affect them in such a unique and powerful way? The more they search for a logical explanation, the less satisfying every answer becomes. Nothing fully explains why this connection feels so different from anything they have experienced before. This bond was never created by convenience or easy circumstances. It cannot be explained with one simple reason or reduced to a single story. It comes from something much deeper, something rooted in genuine recognition that feels both unexpected and impossible to escape. Whether they wanted it or not, something inside them recognized something important in you long before they were ready to admit it. If this connection is truly real, then it asks something meaningful from them. It requires honesty, openness, action, and a willingness to be emotionally exposed. These are qualities they have spent years avoiding because protecting themselves always seemed safer. So instead of moving forward, they try to slow everything down. They create distance, hoping it will reduce the intensity of what continues growing inside them. Yet distance rarely weakens a genuine emotional bond. In many cases, it makes the connection even stronger because outside distractions begin to disappear. Without those distractions, only the truth remains. That truth grows louder instead of fading away. They notice it every time their thoughts return to you without invitation. They feel it when unexpected emotions appear during the middle of an ordinary day. They experience it whenever something deep inside refuses to become quiet, no matter how much effort they make to regain control. Again and again, their attempts to suppress these feelings fail. The real tension now comes from the fact that they fully recognize what they feel while continuing to resist it. They sense the truth, yet they continue questioning it. They recognize its strength, yet they avoid accepting the responsibility that comes with it. This creates an ongoing psychological pressure that refuses to disappear. Instead, it keeps building until something eventually has to change. They are no longer fighting only against their emotions. They are also struggling with what those emotions reveal about themselves. What they feel for you exposes hidden needs they have tried to ignore for years. It reveals a deep desire to connect with someone who truly understands them. It uncovers the longing to be fully seen without pretending to be someone else. At the same time, it also exposes the fear of allowing another person to influence them so deeply. Being deeply affected by someone requires vulnerability. Vulnerability always asks a person to release at least some control, and that is exactly what makes them uncomfortable. Because of this, they continue moving back and forth. One moment they lean closer emotionally, imagining what the future could become. The next moment they convince themselves it is far too complicated or far too risky to continue. This repeated cycle is not random. It serves as a protective shield, allowing them to experience these emotions little by little instead of facing their full intensity all at once. Still, feelings this meaningful cannot be experienced halfway forever. They can delay facing them, but they cannot avoid them permanently. Every delay creates its own cost, and eventually that cost becomes impossible to ignore. Suppressed emotions never simply disappear. Instead, they transform into inner tension, constant restlessness, and endless mental noise that becomes harder to silence with each passing day. Recently, that inner noise has become much louder for them. It no longer affects only their emotions. It influences the way they think, the way they behave, and even the way they physically respond to everyday situations. Sometimes it appears as difficulty focusing. Sometimes it shows up through changing moods or stronger reactions to completely unrelated events. Deep inside, an unresolved truth continues rising to the surface, demanding something they still hesitate to give without fear. If you want to understand how their subconscious keeps leading them back toward you, stay with this journey. Right now, they are much closer to their emotional breaking point than they are willing to admit. Something important is beginning to crack deep inside them. Not on the outside, where they continue presenting a calm and controlled appearance to everyone around them. The real transformation is taking place beneath the surface, where the mind slowly stops pretending and where the truth exists, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. Repression always carries a hidden cost, and eventually that cost must be paid. The longer someone pushes away something genuine, the more strongly it returns later. Feelings that are repeatedly buried do not become weaker. They gather strength in silence until they finally demand to be recognized. That is exactly where they find themselves now. Every attempt to ignore what they feel only makes those emotions return with even greater intensity, making it harder than ever to continue pretending that nothing has changed. What once seemed easy for them to handle now feels uncomfortable, intrusive, and difficult to control in their life. What once felt distant now feels much closer and impossible to ignore without warning. What they were able to deny before now feels completely undeniable and deeply real within their heart. When the subconscious mind can no longer remain quietly controlled, it does not negotiate or gently compromise with them. Instead, it breaks through in sudden, raw, and direct ways they never expected. It reveals itself through their unexpected reactions, their growing irritation, and the way small problems suddenly create stronger frustration than they should. Their ability to focus begins disappearing whenever thoughts of you enter their mind without permission. You are no longer just another person existing somewhere in their outside world. You have become someone who lives within their private thoughts, emotions, and inner world. And that difference changes the entire situation in a powerful way. Things outside of themselves can be avoided, ignored, replaced, or pushed away with time. But inner realities follow a person into quiet moments, into sleep, and into places where they once believed they could be completely alone. Their resistance is slowly becoming weaker because the main question has changed completely for them. It is no longer about whether they feel something genuine inside their heart. That answer has already become clear. The question now is what they will do with these emotions that continue returning and refusing to disappear. That is the part that creates the greatest fear for them. Taking action means becoming exposed. It means showing vulnerability and releasing some of the control they have worked so hard to maintain. Many people spend years trying to avoid situations exactly like this. They try to protect themselves from feelings that become too powerful, but they cannot fully control something that has already changed them from within. You have affected them in ways that have become meaningful and lasting. This change is not something temporary or only happening on the surface. It has reached deeper into how they understand emotions, how they recognize real connections, and how they experience your absence in their everyday life. Your absence has started becoming louder than your presence ever felt before. That reality is what slowly begins affecting them the most. It is not simply about missing you, it is about feeling your influence in different moments, regardless of where they are or what they are doing. This creates a tension inside them that refuses to disappear. It returns again and again, becoming stronger each time. Every attempt to move forward brings them back to the same realization that nothing else feels exactly the same anymore. That quiet comparison slowly weakens the walls they built around themselves. Other things begin feeling less meaningful, less powerful, and less authentic compared to what they experienced with you. This forces them to accept something they avoided for a long time. This connection cannot easily be replaced. The feeling of losing something real creates a silent fear growing inside them. It may not be obvious to others, but internally it continues building slowly and steadily. When something feels impossible to replace, the thought of losing it becomes extremely frightening. The fear of losing something genuine can become stronger than the fear of never having it at all. Because of this, their behavior begins changing in ways they do not completely understand. They become unpredictable, moving between sudden urges and careful restraint. One part of them wants to come closer, end the painful uncertainty, face the truth, and quiet the constant thoughts inside their mind. But another part, one that has learned to protect itself, tells them to stay away, remain guarded, and avoid anything that feels too overwhelming. This internal struggle begins, exhausting them because neither side wants to surrender easily. The conflict creates pressure that becomes difficult to carry. It has moved beyond simple emotions and entered deeper questions about who they truly are and who they pretend to be around others. The version of themselves that avoids you cannot continue existing forever with the version that feels your presence so strongly inside. Eventually, one side will have to make room for the other. They are beginning to recognize their own patterns of running away more clearly than before. They notice when they create distractions, avoid certain thoughts, or step away whenever they get too close to the truth they carry inside. This awareness feels uncomfortable because it removes the illusion that they have complete control. They can now see their own defenses, excuses, and reasons for avoiding what they feel. Once someone recognizes their own avoidance, it becomes much harder to pretend that nothing is happening. That understanding creates pressure that makes returning to old habits feel almost impossible. Even the distance they maintain begins feeling unnatural. The silence starts feeling like a betrayal of their own emotions. They are slowly running out of places where they can hide these feelings. Something important has changed inside them permanently, and this inner shift now demands some kind of resolution. The mind cannot continue carrying this level of contradiction forever. They are standing close to an important moment where they are much nearer to accepting the truth than they want to admit. One more wave of emotion, one more moment of pressure, or one more failure of resistance may push them beyond the point where they can continue holding back. This process will not continue quietly forever. It will eventually reach a point where they can no longer avoid facing reality. The mind may survive denial for some time, but it cannot survive endless conflict without eventually changing. They feel themselves breaking internally because the truth has surrounded them completely. There is no easy escape left through excuses, distractions, or creating more distance. The final stage of hiding these emotions is moving toward direct acceptance of what they truly feel. Whether they feel prepared or not, that confrontation with their own emotions is approaching. Their subconscious no longer waits for permission. It pushes them to make their outside actions match the feelings they continue carrying inside. This difference between what they show and what they feel creates intense pressure that demands a decision. Once the mind reaches this stage, it no longer accepts half answers or temporary solutions. It begins pushing them away from old defenses and toward honesty. A clear choice is slowly forming within them. It develops through a quiet but unavoidable understanding that they cannot keep running forever. Every excuse they once used begins feeling weaker. Every delay starts appearing unnecessary. Every attempt to push these feelings away feels like ignoring an important part of themselves. People can handle fear and pain, but they cannot continue fighting against something they deeply know to be true forever. Eventually, a real choice has to be made. They are approaching that point where avoiding the situation feels heavier than facing it honestly. Their resistance is weakening, not because they willingly decided to surrender, but because they can no longer find strong reasons to keep protecting the same walls. The belief that time would make these feelings disappear is slowly breaking apart. Time did not remove what they feel. Instead, it made those emotions clearer, stronger, and harder to ignore. Silence and distance now feel unnatural. They can no longer remain trapped between fear and desire because both are leading them toward the same realization. Clarity has not given them complete peace. Instead, it has created urgency, restlessness, and a strong inner pull toward honesty. What they feel for you is no longer uncertain or temporary. It feels real, stable, and impossible to leave behind without feeling as though they are losing an important part of themselves. When this hidden truth finally comes forward, it will return with a strength that refuses to remain buried any longer.